welcome to the Modern Homes Podcast with Rob Clemens.
Frank Dominic.
Frank Dominic's here with us, and we got a show today that is a topic that Frank and I were talking about off the air. I think it's a good one. Mm-hmm. You need to be thinking about this if you're a business owner, if you're in sales.
Or a client.
Or if you're a client. And so on the Modern Homes Podcast, we always want to give people who are thinking about buying or selling or anything else, we want to give you some guidance on what you need to know. So we're going to talk about setting expectations today. But Frank, before we get into it, I do want to run into some stats. Mm-hmm. We always like to talk stats about this, and this one's brought to us by Lauren, the marketing person here at the Carolina-based Real Estate and Construction and Modern Homes Podcast.
The marketing guru, we call her.
We do call her the modern. We call her the Modern Homes marketing guru. That's what we call her. But anyway, so what do you think? And you might be able to see my screen already. What do you think the average age of the in the United States? What's the average age of a home buyer? Just a home buyer in general. What is the average?
I know it has skewed up in the last several years. I'm going to say you're probably 40.
40, you would wish it was that young. That would be a young whippersnapper compared to what they're saying.
Really?
This is an actual statistic, and we'll have to look up and see where this was from. It looks like it's saying National Association of Home or Realtors, rather. But it says that the average age is 56 of a home buyer. Now, not first-time home buyer. This is just all home buyers in this country.
Yeah, that kind of
56 years old, that seems kind of old, man. I mean, not old in the sense of you're old, but I mean...
It's not old to me.
That's... That young, 56, right? But no,
That's a child.
They're a baby at that age. But no, I mean, it's in the real world, 56 isn't bad. But when you're thinking that's the average age of a home buyer, that seems pretty old.
Yeah, you would think the larger demographic would be skewed 35 to 45.
Well, especially, and we do have to take into account that baby boomers are still a big part of the market. So sure, they're pulling the age up, but millennials had a gigantic. I haven't seen the stats on this, but you remember they called the baby boom.
Yes,
because there were so many babies born in a short period. But I've heard the millennial group kind of challenge that.
It's a large group, yeah.
Right. So you would think they would be kind of skewing it the other direction a little. So anyway, and then one other. Oh, go ahead.
In my brief run as a realtor, though, I think my youngest client was 46, 47.
Wow. See, so there you go. 46 or 47.
Most have been above the age of 50.
Gosh, man. Well, so the stats.
I fit the average.
Yeah, the stats are playing. And here's one other one that kind of goes back into what I was talking about a show or two ago, where I was talking about we need home affordability. We need to be able to get people homes again.
We need to be able to skew the younger generation into the ability to buy a house.
They need to be able to at least have a path to buying a house. Well, this is what the market said. It said that first-time home builders only make up 24% of the market. Now, here's the stunning part of that, because we talked about directions last time. 24% of the market are first-time home buyers, which is the lowest level since this began tracking in 1981. Wow. So think about that. I mean, that is a long... So in all of these years, 1981, we're talking about 30 plus years, 40 years, right?
It's skewed the furthest down.
We are down to the lowest amount of first-time home buyers. So we do have a problem. It is trending the wrong direction. Got to keep doing better, right? All right. Well, okay. So now with that being said, let's get to the topic of the show. We got about 20 minutes today, and I want to talk about this setting expectations, because it was actually your idea when you first started talking about this. And
it's a big part of being a realtor, or you being a project manager on a construction job or remodel job, is the expectations of everyone from the start of the project, during the project, and at the completion of the project. They do have to shift with the time. I mean,
absolutely.
How many times have you and I had a discussion where you're waiting on something to come in from a supplier that was held up, nothing to do with you ordering it, nothing to do with the manufacturer, it was just a run that wasn't completed in time?
Well, it happens a lot. But and I think that part of what happens is when you're young into business, you're so desperate to make a sell, and you're worried about setting expectations. I don't want to tell you that there's going to be a couple of delays in the process. I don't want to tell you,
especially not up front.
Right, exactly. I don't want to tell you that there may be some color variation if you go from one thing to another. But the truth is when you don't set those expectations, you're creating future conflict. No doubt about it. And some customers are less generous than others about how they handle The lack of expectation, right?
Yeah.
Well, you said it's true of real estate. You said it's true of home building, and we're going to talk about some of the ways that you can apply that later. But it's true of everything.
Sure.
Man. I mean, you just apply it to anything.
My previous business was every busy weekend.
I was about to say restaurants. If you go into a restaurant and the waiter or waitress comes up and they say, "Hey, look, I want to let you know that, it's going to be well." Better example, you go to a hostess station, they say, okay, please grab a seat, and they don't tell you how long it's going to be. An hour later, you're ticked. If you come in and they say, hey, look, we got a big line, it's probably going to be about an hour.
It's exceptionally busy, it's probably going to be about an hour.
Exactly.
And they seat you after 40 minutes, you're happy.
Well, now you're happy. They set expectations and actually over.
Heroic.
But I think the truth is that if they just say an hour, you get the chance to make the decision. Am I going to sit for that hour? And if you do, you're okay with it. But if they just sit you down and say, yeah, sure, have a seat, we'll be with you. And then an hour later, boy, is it not a different experience?
Well, I told you when we would hire a hostess or a host, the very first thing I would have them do is sit down. I would either take their phone or have them put it away and make sure they weren't wearing a watch or couldn't see a clock.
Yeah.
And I said, I want you to tell me when 5 minutes has passed. I'm going to sit here and do some stuff. And I would just handle some things around the station. And they would look up usually about 2.5 minutes and go, it's about 5 minutes now, right?
Yeah, 2.5 minutes.
Because you're sitting there.
Oh, no. I get it.
You're like, what they say, a watched pot never boils. Is that the other line?
I've never heard that one, but okay.
Yeah, but you're waiting for something to happen. It seems like a long time.
A watched pot never boils. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, it's true because what you did there is you put the perspective back on them. And one thing I love that you did on a management level is I think all managers, our duty is to get people to think past the job. Yeah. The job is, well, I sit people down. I serve people food. I sell people real estate. But that's the job. But the mission is to have happy people. So it goes beyond that.
I try in every walk, every career I've had, with different types of sales, business owner now as a realtor, I try to always remain a client. Because once you start thinking like a realtor solely and getting into that, complaining about things that happen to realtors, you're losing the perspective of your bread and butter who's paying your bills.
Well, and that applies in home building. I'll tell you how it applies in home building. And my mentor in business, I talk about this sometimes, my mentor in business, I used to feel like when I first got into the industry, I'm a college graduate. My father was a preacher, as you know. Nobody ever taught me construction.
No.
Or
sales.
And I learned, well, you learn salesmanship from preachers quite well, to be honest with you.
But you know how to tell a story.
You know how to tell a story or two and to make connections. But no, it's like when I was growing up, I wasn't one of those kids who watched their father, installing siding and all that. I didn't get all that. I learned all that as an adult. But my point being that when I first got into the business, my mentor was a guy who had been building with his hands since he was a kid. So he would say things like on my first day, like, well, the LVL over there has got to be like this, and the concrete was the 4,000.
You're writing it down like LVL is what?
Oh, no.
I'll look it up later?
No, it's even worse than that. He's saying LVL, and I'm like, later on, I'm trying to remember the PYL. You're trying to piece together things you never heard. But the part is that he had become so detached from not knowing that people don't know everything you're talking about, clients and otherwise. And so we have to always think like, we're at that first level again. What's it feel like to be the customer on the first day?
Always got to be a customer at heart. The other thing, and I'm blessed, is that I'm in a position in life where I can continue to think that way because I'm working out of choice. I don't have that pressure on me to have to do something.
Right. You're doing it for the love of the game.
I like it. I like people, and I like love it. The game. That's true. We do talk about that. I like the action.
I got you. Well, okay. So tell me a time that you and look, this show's got to be real if nothing else. Tell me about a time you did not set expectations well and how it hurt you, in real estate or otherwise.
Well, in real estate, right away, it goes back a couple deals ago. We always talk that closings are a moving target.
Yeah.
They're average.
That's a nice way to put it.
We're going to say it's the 20th. It could be the 21st. Could be the 19th.
A very moving target.
It's a moving target.
Right. Sure.
Well, I had an older client, super nice guy, still friendly with him. I just talked to him the other day. And we go to set the closing. We set it up. He moves out of his house, closes on his house, comes down here and stays with family, which was a lot of people in a small place with pets and it was just should have been one day because he was going to close the next day, and it took a whole another week for him to close.
Oh boy,
because there were things not taken care of on the seller's side as pertaining to the HOA. And every day to have that conversation, like, it's not today.
Yeah, if you could have gone back in time, you might have said, hey, look, this closing could take anywhere from X to Y.
Well, yeah, if somebody would have indicated from any part of that chain that we might have this hiccup, I found out the day before, and I'm like, normally you get this in 24 hours. I'm like, okay, we're still on target.
Yeah.
No, we weren't. You remember that deal?
Oh, I remember that deal very well.
We were both on the phone several times to make something
A couple of beads of sweat coming down at one point. No, I find that...
And it wasn't his fault, wasn't my fault, wasn't anyone's fault, other than I think the seller didn't disclose that.
Well, no, but I think what happens over time is when you learn to set expectations, it starts to mask some of the faults. So let me explain what I mean. Because I've got, unfortunately, from being years of a business owner and in management positions, I've got tons of examples of where we could have set expectations better. But a couple of the easy ones, if I can, just kind of take the mic on this, are... One is time frames. I've always been a punctual guy. I mean, in general, if I say I'm going to be there at 8, I'm there at 7:59 or 8, barring, some kind of a disaster's happened. But I want to do that with everybody. And so one of the things in the home building or remodeling business is, you talk to your electrician, you say, hey, what time are you going to be there tomorrow, Johnny? Johnny says, I'll be there at 9. And so you call the customer. This is mistake number one if you're thinking about getting into contracting. Hey, Mrs. Johnson, Johnny's going to be over there at 9 tomorrow. And then Johnny shows up at 10 a.m.,
Or doesn't show it.
Well, now that's a whole other problem, Frank. I'm not even going down that road. Johnny's getting fired if that happens. But I'm talking about, Johnny shows up at 10. I learned a lesson. You never give an exact time in this business. So now when Johnny tells me 9, I say, hey, Mrs. Johnson, Johnny's going to be there between 8 and 10:30, and it gives me that buffer. So if he's later than that, now I can cream him.
Then you could set the expectation to Johnny and say, look, you got to be there no later than 9:30 because they won't be home.
Right, and so at that way you're kind of playing both ends, but you have to.
You have to.
The other example, now this is to the good side. I found years ago, especially a remodel project. See, the difference between a new construction and a remodel is that when we do a new construction, there's no homeowner home all day. It'd be very rare for them to
Access to the property is very easy.
Access is easy. Homeowners aren't home. You come and go as you please, pretty much.
Stage your supplies ahead of time, all that stuff.
Well, yeah, stuff can sit right in the middle of the lawn and so forth. But look, at the end of the day, the homeowner's not privy to any of that, but on a remodel, they are very much privy to all of it. They're looking at their prized possession, and you leave garbage all over the place and all this, and it sets a bad expectation. But use something where you're in the middle of a day where there's going to be some riffraff on the property. There's a very simple thing I taught construction people years ago, and I'm telling you as a homeowner, you might want to ask this question, which was, Mrs. Johnson, I just want to let you know that right now we're going to go and hit lunch. There is some miscellaneous stuff that you're seeing around the property. Right. Everything's going to plan. We'll be back at about 1 o'clock. If you have any questions, call me. But otherwise, we're going to have this wrapped up by the end of the day. Now, that is setting expectations. But instead of just leaving it open like, hey, these guys just left. Are they going to leave my property, all garbage today? Right. That one little thing, Frank, it could have been the same exact process. But by setting the expectation, you change the experience.
It's a measurable change. The one I remember, too, is Jamie Pando, the flooring guy we're friends with. When he said that his guys go back in, he has them go back in at the last 5 minutes, go out, pack everything up, but go back in one more time before you leave.
Man, and when
huge.
And if you can get your people to do that, that is an amazing thing. That will solve a lot of problems. Well, okay, so let's talk about, you talked about during the process. Tell me about something that people can do on the buying side. What is something people can be doing to understand from their agent what expectations need to be known? So we're talking a lot about you being proactive and me being proactive, but what's something your agent should be asking beforehand?
I always ask, every agent, if they're doing the worth of salt, they're asking, what are you looking for? 4-bedroom, 3-bedroom, big yard important to you? Or, water important to you? A pool, all those things. Once you have all those things down, then you break it down into have-to-haves. Something that's going to check the boxes. You know what I mean? I'm working with somebody right now. They need a 4th bedroom in their house because it's a musician. And he wants to do in-house rehearsals. So he's going to soundproof it. He's going to put equipment in there. So it can't be like a flex room like you see in some of these.
Sure.
It's got to be a doored room or something where we could put a door on it and soundproof it a little bit. That's
nice.
huge.
So you're setting expectation.
That's the most important room in the house for them.
Okay, got you. So what you're doing is, and these are things that clients can be asking you to set their expectations. So they should be saying what to you to make sure they get it. Just kind of setting out what they need.
I basically, once we have the initial conversation and we're going to look at some properties, they're going to tell me about what they're looking for, bedroom-wise, size-wise, price-wise, and then I break down what are the most important things to you.
Okay.
Sometimes, I just had one, not too long ago, it was an outdoor space. Wanted a pool. That was the most important part of the purchase.
Okay, yeah. And at the end of the day,
it's a nice house with a nice pool.
So how do you set expectations for somebody who says, I want a pool? Give me something that you would say, if somebody says, Frank, I'm moving down to the area, I really want to buy a pool. How do you set expectations for them to prevent potential disappointment later?
First thing is I find out if they're okay with the neighborhood that has a community.
Okay, I got you.
That's number one.
Yeah.
Then we have a lot of flexibility because there's a ton of communities here with pools.
Sure.
Then after that, I find out, is an above ground an option for you? Typically not. Typically not lately.
Maybe, well, it kind of depends on, what's your overall budget. Sure.
Well, and all those things, they all flesh out with the budget. Budget question really narrows it down.
Yeah, it does. So, yeah.
Because if I'm looking to spend $350,000 and I want a luscious in-ground pool in the backyard with a gazebo and all that, it's out there somewhere, but it's not here in Myrtle.
Well, I think that's kind of where I thought you were going with it. I think that's where you're going is setting expectations sometimes comes down to that. Somebody comes in and says, I want a 5,000 square foot house. I'm looking for a pool. I'm looking for this, this, and this. And it's like, well, first expectation, despite contrary to what you might have heard, that's going to be a $5 million house down here or whatever it is. You know what I mean? You got to set that pricing expectation. The thing I would do when I got into the pool thing is I would set expectations with, look, when I built my house back in 2007, we put in a pool and it had the saltwater salt generator for the chlorine, concrete coat.
So you put it in as building it?
Well, as we were building the home. And, it's about a 15,000 gallon pool, so not a tiny pool. And it had all the nice little thing, underwater lights, the whole 9 yards. And it was $22,500. Now, I did get a good deal because I'm a builder.
Super deal.
$22,500. Now, I talked to my cousin. He recently had a pool done, and he said as he started interviewing people, that same pool, $60,000. So
starting at 60.
Starting at 60. So the first expectation is somebody says, I want this, and this. And it's like, well, I need to set your expectations before I drive you around for the next 3 days, getting your morale depressed. We're going to have a little bit of a challenge, maybe finding some of these things, right?
Well, another avenue I take is I show them the kind of homes that they describe they're looking for.
Right.
Typically, I try to keep them in their budget, and something will always come along the lines of, a lot of these homes need some work. That's an indirect way of saying your budget's too low.
Okay,
what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Then, if we find something they like, I try to skew them to a direction that's maybe a little less than they can put the pool in.
That's great.
Because the location to me is more important than the pool.
Well, it should be, indeed. So here's the thing I think, and again, we're talking about setting expectations. I think sometimes setting expectations is partially letting people know that everything is going to plan. And that's kind of like what I was saying when you leave a job site. But, so I was talking to some City of Myrtle Beach police officers today. They were actually doing a little something for the Chamber of Commerce. Nice. And I was asking them some of their challenges. And the guy, he's actually in Highway Patrol. And he said that a lot of times when you pull somebody, the very first thing is there's like a guardedness by the person who's getting pulled. They're feeling like, oh my God, what's going on? Yeah. And he said a lot of times he'll diffuse what is a very high anxiety period just by saying, hey, look, this kind of thing happens. Or if somebody gets in a car accident, it's like, these things happen sometimes. We're going to do this, this, and this. Everything's going to be okay. This is your next steps. And what he was describing to me is setting expectations. He's saying, look, this thing that happened, it's not the end of the world. This and this and this are your next steps, and everything's going to be okay. And I think that's as opposed to, here's your ticket. I'm out of here. You know what I mean?
You make me laugh because I used to have quite the lead foot, and one time I had 4 tickets in I think like a month and a half.
Man, dude, that's not lead foot. That's like a 10,000 pound foot.
A little bit. I pretty much cured myself of it because your insurance as a younger man goes up. But anyway, I remember one cop that I still remember the experience because of how he diffused it, like you said.
Yeah.
He walked up to me, and before saying, why I pulled you over or license, he went over and he goes, it's a nice car. What year is this?
Yeah.
And then we had a conversation about the car. And then
Okay.
well, you know why I pulled you over.
Yeah. Oh.
By then I'm like, oh, you're actually going to give me a ticket? You know what I mean? But he made me like loosen up a little bit.
I feel like I maybe...
This car's pretty quick.
It's a pretty good, like, and it's a funny way to do it because, like, it may hit certain people wrong. But the first time I ever got a speeding ticket, you know what I got called? And this is going back. He said, no, he called me Kyle Petty. I thought that was pretty good. I was like, well done, sir.
Yeah.
I said, I didn't realize I was going that fast, but thank you. Anyway, but no, that's good stuff. I want to take a quick break, and I want to get back to a couple other questions.
Is there anything like you would suggest to somebody looking to build a custom home? Because that, again, is a big expectation managed there.
Good question, man. I really, I think that the biggest thing is that you first have to understand that not all builders are what you would call great communicators. I know it's kind of an interesting thing to say, but a lot of them are very technical people. They're used to looking at plans and figuring out how many nuts and bolts we need, and it's not necessarily in their nature to verbalize everything. So you do need to ask those questions as a buyer. Some of the questions I would ask right off the bat are, what is a realistic time frame for this type of project? Because a lot of times people go in making assumptions, and then they find out, especially in the home building game, that it could be a 12-month to 16-month process. So do you have the time for that? So I would get over that hurdle early. Get that expectation out of the way. I would ask them if they have experience building that type of a project. One thing that you have to watch out for is that I believe that builders will figure out how to do things. And if you've done one, you can figure out how to do another. But as the buyer, you may want to kind of just have a comfort level with, have you done this type of project? And if so, what are the things that might come up on this kind of a project?
Both of those are much like a doctor. If somebody's going to operate on you, the bedside manner, sometimes the top surgeon really doesn't have the bedside manner. But you find out he's done 200 of these procedures, you're like, okay.
Man, Frank, you mentioned something. We're not going this direction on this show, but I do want to say it's a cautionary tale to all of us in this life. It's like sometimes you do it so much. My perception of that great surgeon is there was a point in their career when they did the first heart surgery where they're probably like, yes, ma'am, and then we're going to do this. And they're probably a little bit more. And after a while, the ego kicks in. I'm the best.
I had a high-level surgeon who used to come into my restaurant, and I never forgot him telling me that the operating room has Metallica blaring while he's operating.
Which one? Are we going in Justice for All? He
was like Master of Puppets era. And I was like,
this
it didn't fit. I always thought it was to be like serene music.
Yeah, you would think so.
Zenned out. No.
He's just all mad.
No, because to him it was like putting a tire on a car for a mechanic. You know what I mean?
Well, so his setting expectations is if you wake up in the middle of the surgery.
But it was really funny. Like, he's like, sometimes, you get a text. I'm like, you get a text? And he's like, well, that's just what I do.
It's not a big deal.
So it's like people driving that road to get to a red light, they check their phone.
Check their phones and then get back to the surgery.
You're driving a car.
Man, I don't know, man. At doctors, as you're setting expectations, you might want to not talk about that one.
No.
Hey, I'm going to be checking text messages while.
But the music choice, I was like, really?
It is pretty wild. Yeah. But to go back to this, I do think that there's something to be said for this. You have to understand as a professional, and since we're going to wrap up the setting expectations comment here.
Try not to become desensitized to the client experience.
You said a minute ago, you said that you think like a consumer, and maybe you might not have always been like that, but you are like that now. Yeah. And we all should do that. Just because you've done 200 heart surgeries does not mean that person's had 200 heart surgeries. So you do need to treat them like they've never had one before. That feeling is authentic, and it's true of home building, remodeling, real estate, everything else we're doing. So interesting stuff, man. Well, you have some time for two questions. Two questions for the show up. Well, I guess I'll give you one, and then you want me to start?
Sure.
All right, so Frank, when somebody is hiring an agent and they're looking at buying in 2024, what's a reasonable time frame to be expecting to find the dream home? Because ultimately people are coming in, they're thinking, hey, I'm going to be here for the weekend and I'd like to find a home to live in. Set that expectation.
I immediately take that pressure off of people. Okay. Because if they're in town to look, I try to see as many homes as I can with them in that time frame. I'm doing in that process now. Then when they leave, I have a clear idea of what they're looking for. I can do the video walkthroughs for them, and they feel comfortable with that because I know what they're looking for and they've kind of conveyed it to me. That's one. But typically for me, it's been about 2.5 months.
Would you? Okay, 2.5 months. That sounds like a pretty...
Once they're in the game.
Yeah.
You got people that are... Yeah.
Well, I understand that. If you, so your expectation will be we are starting the search today. You want to buy something, be planning 2.5 months. I mean, we're probably not going to find something over the weekend. It can happen, but that's not been my experience.
I've had it happen that literally, if the thing I'm working on now, if this happens, it's the very first time I show this.
Would you say that's a good strategy? I kind of like the strategy, to be honest with you.
I like it.
Your strategy is, let's go look at a smaller sample of homes on the first meeting, just a small sample. Let's not set 50 appointments.
I go in multiple areas, so they see multiple neighborhoods, because a lot of my clients are from out of town.
Okay.
So they're not familiar with what a Merle's Inlet or a Surfside is, or a Socastee or whatever. So we get into those areas and I'll be like, I like it over here.
Okay.
And this couple I'm working with now, they live on the West Coast, and we went into the first neighborhood, and she's like, this reminds me of New England, where I'm from. And I'm like, kind of, yeah.
Was that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's good.
Okay, she's like, I want to live right back where I was, sort of. Okay.
Well, yeah, they don't, like me, they don't want the cold anymore.
Okay, gotcha. All right, well, but I like this. So you're saying strategically, you found as an agent, let's go look at a small selection of houses, and then I get a vibe of what you like geographically and otherwise, and then you can do your research and get them a more targeted
I have them
approach.
select the homes too.
Oh, sure. Okay, gotcha.
I've learned in the last couple of years, sending a bunch of homes out, it's nice to look at, but it's window shopping. It doesn't have any skin meat on the bone.
Well, let me give you one other setting expectations things that's good for realtors right now. Back about 3 years ago, and I've got some stats on this I just did, and watch out for Carolina-based real estate. I'll be launching these soon. But in October of 2024, the average listing price to average sell price, so it's listed for this and ends up selling for this, was at 98%. So in other words, somebody lists their home for X amount of dollars. Right. It's going to close at about 2% less than that on average, because there's negotiating and things. If you zoom back a few years ago during the COVID era, that number was 100 or even higher.
I know.
The average was. And so setting expectations, you might still find people who are like, well, I'm going to put my house on the market for this, and I'm expecting to get full price offers. It's like, well, let me set your expectations. That's not really how the market is right now.
In the last 6 deals that I've done, I want to say we're probably at 5 to 8% below asking.
Wow, that's pretty good, man. So you're coming in low. You're doing better than the market. Yeah. Frank Dominic, negotiator extraordinaire. All right, cool. Do you have a question for me, Frank?
I do. When you have somebody looking at you and it's a complete blank canvas, we want to build a custom home, we want you to design it. How do you manage that expectation? Because we both know that is a sometimes daunting test that you got to, how do you extract that information from them to find out exactly what they're looking for?
To give you that answer, I'm going to go to the restaurant business of what you are in. The difference between doing a custom home and building from a selection of homes like D.R. Horton or Beazer or one of those companies is, it's the equivalent of if somebody came into your restaurant and they said, I don't really want anything on this menu. Make me a meal. And I'm really craving something with some shrimp and some crab legs and how about some peanut butter? And you're sitting here and you're going, well, what does that cost?
See, I like doing that.
Oh, yeah,
I love doing that, but it was tough to do in the restaurant because you got things that have to work like a machine.
But how much is that going to cost? Do we have the materials? Is that something that we can do at all? And so I will answer that question like this. Here's the thing. Somebody says, I'm an open book and I'm looking at building a home. Well, we're going to start from the lowest hanging fruit. And let's be honest, I'm going to say, what is your budget? Not what you can afford, what is your budget? And I want to make sure people understand that.
I'm the same way. That's the exact wording I use. That's kind of ironic.
Right, because if you're going to sit here and tell me, well, I want to build a home and I design you a 10,000 square foot house and then you can't afford it, what was the point of that? So I want to know your
with a helicopter pad on the roof.
Exactly. right, exactly. Now then once we get over a couple of hurdles, Frank, and we talk about time frame and we talk about geography, where you want to be, the most important thing I can do is understand curb appeal. Most people will be attracted to the curb appeal and then the rest of the home will flow behind it. Very rarely will you find somebody go, this house is ugly, I cannot stand it, but the floor plan's great.
Right.
You don't buy that home, right? Okay. So I will show them facades of several different architectures, French style, Mediterranean style, low country style, right? And when I get through those, I'll say, which one of these appeals you most? And usually
there is something.
They go, I love that one. And then now we're playing some jazz. Now we talk about square footages, bedrooms. So, but that's setting expectations.
The reason why I asked that question is it's very common because when I'm talking to somebody and their budget skews a little higher, they'll say, we guys build homes, right? I'm like, absolutely we do. Then the next question I go, what are you looking for? I don't know. I'm like an open canvas.
Oh, yeah. Right. Do you have an open canvas wallet?
Yeah. Is your wallet made of canvas?
Right. Literally.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Frank, I think that's enough time for questions for this show. Very good. I appreciate the insight as always. What you up to over the next couple of days? You
got a couple gigs going on, and then
gigs?
I'm heading towards the beginning of the year. I told you I'm taking a pretty big trip.
Fantastic. Well, we got CCU football coming up. Check them out on this coming Saturday. The season-ending game at home, anyway. The season-ending home game, and so we'll be out there. Check out Carolina Bays. And for all you visitors and viewers, we appreciate you checking us out.
Yes.
Make sure to check us out next week and like and share us on social media. And this is Robin and Frank signing off on the Modern Homes Podcast.